There's a scene you see in almost every romantic movie, right? It's practically a
Well,
cliche.
absolutely, the big moment.
Yeah, the two main characters, they're at a breaking point. The tension is it's so high. Maybe they've been arguing or there's just this thick, unspoken thing hanging in the air.
Words have completely failed them.
Exactly. They're just staring at each other, totally lost.
And then the music swells.
The music swells, they lock eyes, and boom, they fall into bed together. And the message, the one we've all, I think, internalized way more than we want to admit.
Is that intimacy fixes it?
It's the bridge. It's the glue. It's the moment the blurry picture finally snaps into focus and suddenly they get each other.
It's the perfect cinematic solution, isn't it? We love that narrative because it promises that, physical closeness is the ultimate resolver of ambiguity.
Yeah.
If we can just get physically close enough, that emotional distance will, poof, vanish.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful idea.
It is. But today, we're going to look at the exact opposite of that. And I have to warn you, it's a little unsettling. We're doing a deep dive into this really profound, kind of haunting essay by the writer and philosopher Pedro Malha. It's called Sex That Confirmed an Absence.
It is such a striking piece of writing. And you're right, it's haunting. Because Malha, he isn't interested in the success story. He's looking at this very specific, very human thing.
What's that?
The moment when sex doesn't solve the mystery. When it solves the equation in a way you really didn't want. When it acts not as a bridge, but as a solvent.
That phrase, sex is a solvent.
Yeah,
that is the anchor here. It stuck with me immediately. But before we get into the chemistry of it all, let's set the scene.
Okay.
Because I was expecting this, like high stakes, dramatic setup. But Malha is describing something much more common.
Oh, much more. And that's what makes it so pervasive. He's describing a state of quiet promise. This isn't some desperate last-ditch attempt to save a relationship.
Right. Or some wild fling.
Exactly. It's usually earlier on or in that gray area we all find ourselves in. Situationships, early dating, that kind of thing. He calls it a restrained, practical anticipation.
Which feels so much more real than the movie version. You're not expecting fireworks. You're just thinking, oh, okay, things have been a little awkward. We haven't quite clicked with words yet.
But there's something there, an attraction.
Yeah. So the logic is if we get physically close, that will somehow translate what we haven't been able to say.
Precisely. You're basically banking on the body being more honest than the mind. We trust that physical chemistry is some kind of truth teller.
And that brings us back to that metaphor you mentioned.
The solvent.
Right, the solvent. And think about what a solvent actually does, like in a lab. It doesn't build anything up. It breaks things down. It dissolves the solid stuff so you can see what's really inside.
So in this case, the solid stuff is our defenses.
Yeah.
The small talk and all that.
Yes. Malha says that sex can feel like a solvent because it's a moment where the usual rules of distance soften. We let our guard down. We're less edited. The social mask comes off.
It does, and the logic is sound. If there's a deep connection hiding under all that awkwardness, this is the environment where it should, bubble to the surface.
It's the ultimate vibe check. You're thinking, okay, if it's there, I'm going to feel it now.
Right.
But this is where the essay takes a turn. Because in Malha's scenario, the solvent works. It gets rid of the awkwardness, but it doesn't reveal a hidden connection.
It reveals that the connection just isn't there.
It dissolves all the ambiguity to reveal a vacuum.
And that's the pivot. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Malha writes that instead of opening a door, the encounter closes one gently but definitively.
Okay, but we need to be really careful here because I think people might hear that and jump to the wrong conclusion.
You're right. Malha is very careful about this too. We are not talking about a bad experience, not in the usual sense.
Yeah, let's unpack that. Because when I first saw the title, I thought, well, this is about bad sex. Clumsy, awkward, weird vibes.
Right.
But that is not what he's talking about.
Right. No, and in a way, that's the cruel part. Because if it were just bad technique, you could work on that. But Malha is clear. The encounter can be tender, attentive, technically generous.
So nobody did anything wrong.
Nobody. There's no anger, no betrayal. There can be kindness, even affection in the room.
Which makes the realization so much harder to deal with. If it was just bad sex, you could write it off. Say, oh, we had an off night. You can fix mechanics.
You can, but Malha is describing something where on the surface everything goes right. The mechanics are fine, everyone's polite. But underneath, There's this specific feeling he calls a hollowness.
A hollowness.
Yes, it's the recognition that the thing you hoped for, that spark of I see you, you see me, it just never was present to begin with. It wasn't being held back. It just isn't in the room.
That is a heavy thing to realize. It's one thing to feel rejected, but it's another to feel like you're knocking on a door that just doesn't lead anywhere.
It's like a ghost story. That's a great analogy. You're in a house, it looks comfortable, but then you realize nobody actually lives there. And this brings us to maybe the most important point in the whole essay. It's about the difference between effort and capacity.
Okay, this was the part that just stopped me in my tracks. Because our whole culture is about work, right? If a relationship has a problem, you work harder at it.
Communicate better, go to therapy, read the books. We are obsessed with the idea that we can engineer connection if we just try hard enough.
But Mal is suggesting that in these moments, what you're hitting isn't a lack of effort, it's a limit of capacity.
There's this one line that I think you probably highlighted too.
Let me guess. You cannot argue someone into having what they do not have.
That's the one. It's a devastatingly simple truth. You can negotiate habits, you can ask someone to take out the trash or listen better, but you can't negotiate their inner orientation.
Inner orientation. Let's dig into that. What does he mean by that?
Well, think about mutuality. We usually think of that as, enthusiasm. Are they as into this as I am? But he's talking about a deeper alignment. Are our internal compasses pointing the same way?
So, our bodies might be meeting, but our internal directions are just off.
Exactly. One person is reaching for a certain kind of depth, a resonance that the other person just isn't carrying. They don't have it in them.
So one person's looking for a soul merge and the other is just having a perfectly nice time.
Or maybe they're both looking for connection, but on totally different frequencies. It's like trying to tune an old radio. You can turn the dial, but if they aren't broadcasting on your band, you're never going to hear the music. It's not a refusal. The equipment just isn't there.
And realizing that, well, Malha calls the realization unaccusatory.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. It's not, you failed me. It's just, oh, you don't have this.
Exactly. It's evidence rather than remedy. It's a moment of sobering awareness, and that brings this very specific emotional aftermath that isn't really heartbreak.
Right. Because you can't lose something you never really had. Breaking up after 10 years, that's loss. This is, Malha calls it a disorientation. And that makes perfect sense. You've been operating on a maybe, and suddenly the maybe is just gone.
The whole landscape just shifts under your feet. It's sobering. Before, you could project all your hopes onto that ambiguity. Oh, once we sleep together, they'll open up. But now the light's on. The question is settled. Not by a choice, but by exposure.
Which brings us to that other big metaphor he uses, the one I think I'll carry with me. Sex as a mirror rather than a bridge.
Yes, that's the core image. We want it to be a bridge, to take us from me to we. But in this kind of encounter, it just acts like a mirror. It reflects back the absolute limits of what's possible between two people.
It shows you where closeness ends.
And that boundary wasn't created by the act. It was just made visible by it. He has that line, what seemed like a doorway was always a wall.
Wow. A wall painted to look like a door. And you only find out it's solid when you try to walk through it. That sounds so lonely.
It is, but it's not a wall built out of malice. It's just the structural limit of that relationship. The other person isn't keeping you out. There's just no inside for you to go into, not the one you were looking for anyway.
So, what do you do with that information? Because it feels like a total dead end. But he doesn't suggest just burning everything to the ground.
Right, and this is where it gets really nuanced. He talks about honesty, though not the performative kind. It doesn't mean you have to have a big, dramatic confrontation.
Yeah, you don't sit them down over coffee and say, I've discovered our spiritual incompatibility.
Yes. No, that would be a very awkward morning after, excuse me, we need to discuss your lack of inner orientation.
Right.
No, you might still care for them. You might even still desire them. But the terms of engagement, they have to change.
They have to. Because the illusion is gone. You can't unsee the wall. Malha calls it a quiet withdrawal of fantasy.
A recalibration of expectations. It's a moment of real maturity, I think. You stop trying to force the situation to be something it's not.
He uses this phrase, the tenderness of reality. It sounds like a paradox. How can this awful discovery be tender?
Well, think of the struggle before. The constant analyzing, the wondering, the what did they mean by that? It's exhausting. The tenderness is the relief of just stopping the struggle.
It's the tenderness of not forcing meaning where it does not exist.
Yeah. I guess when you start banging your head against the wall, it stops hurting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that leads to what he calls the quiet ache. It's not a sharp pain. It's this lingering feeling, not so much longing for the person, but an ache about the limitation itself. The calm of just knowing, okay, this is as far as this goes.
It might not be what you wanted, but it's true. And there's a real value in that truth.
It's funny, we always think of closure as something you get from a big talk.
Mm.
I need to talk to them to get closure.
We script these exit interviews in our heads.
Yeah. But Malha is saying the act itself and that feeling of absence, that's the closure.
Absolutely. It's closure through experience, a reality that has been seen and cannot be unseen. No amount of talking can argue away that hollowness you felt. The body already knows.
You know, it really challenges how we think about intimacy, especially now. We put so much pressure on sex to be this transformative, magical thing.
We do. We burden it with the job of saving us or defining us. And Maha is just gently saying, look, sometimes it's just a gauge, a measurement.
A gauge that reads empty.
Or just incompatible. And it's better to know the tank is empty than to keep driving, thinking you have a full tank of gas.
That's a great way to put it. And it's that difference between something being missing as in delayed versus missing as in just unavailable.
And we spend so much time hoping for the delayed connection. Oh, once things calm down at work or once we move in together, then it will deepen.
We reinterpret the absence because the truth is too stark.
Right. The truth is that they just can't meet us there. But this kind of encounter, it can feel final because it names the boundary. And once you really see it, you can't unsee it.
Everything changes after that.
It does. You might still have dinner with them, laugh at them, but you know you're dining with a friend or something else. You're not auditioning them for the big role anymore.
And it's such a private, lonely knowledge. Your friends might say, but they're so great. You guys are perfect. And how do you even begin to explain that you touched the wall where you thought a door would be?
And that you're not even angry about it. That's the hardest part. There's no villain. There's just a sober awareness.
It requires accepting that people are finite, that we are finite.
It does. That capacity idea is actually really forgiving in a way. It releases them from the pressure of having to be something they're not.
And it releases you from the project of trying to change them.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap this up, we started with the Hollywood myth that sex solves ambiguity.
And we landed on the realization that sometimes it just confirms a structural emotional limit.
And while that sounds kind of depressing, what you're saying, what Malha is saying, is that knowing is actually a good thing.
It's grounding. Uncertainty is exhausting. Misplaced hope is exhausting. Reality, even a limiting reality, is solid ground. You can build on solid ground.
It gets rid of the what if.
Exactly. It settles the question. And that frees you up to go find a door that actually opens.
So here's a thought to leave you all with. It builds on what Malha was hinting at. We spend so much of our lives looking for answers in words, right? We analyze, we talk, we look for closure in conversations.
But we often ignore the evidence of our own experience. We feel the hollowness, but we listen to the words promising fullness.
Right. So the question is, how many open questions in your life right now are actually already answered? How many times have you already seen the evidence of an absence, but you're tired from trying to reinterpret it into something else?
Sometimes the most absolute closure isn't a conversation. It's just finally stopping the reinterpretation.
Maybe the door isn't just stuck. Maybe it really is a wall. And maybe it's time to stop banging on it.
And turn around.
Exactly. Thanks for diving deep with us. That was a heavy one, but a necessary one.
My pleasure.
We'll see you on the next one. Take care.